I used to believe that love was enough. That if you gave someone your whole heart, they'd never question your place in theirs. But love, I've learned, doesn't guarantee loyalty. And sometimes, the people who deserve your devotion the most are the ones who end up forgotten. Frank wasn't my biological father, but you'd never know that from the way he treated me. He married my mom when I was just 4. I don't remember much about my real dad, Michael, just fragments. A deep voice, the scent of aftershave, and him walking out the door one rainy night, never to return. But Frank was always there. He was the one who stayed up with me when I had nightmares, whispering silly stories until I fell asleep. The one who taught me how to ride a bike, who came to every school play, no matter how small my part. He called me kiddo and made me feel like the most important person in the world. When I turned 13, Frank quit his office job, one with benefits and a steady paycheck, to chase a dream. He wanted to build something that could sustain us all, something he could pass down to me one day. So he started a poultry farm from scratch. The land was inherited from his late uncle, but the work? That was all him. I remember the early years, how he'd come home reeking of sweat and feathers, his hands blistered, his back aching. My mom used to nag him, say he was wasting his life. That he should have stayed in the office, where at least he had air conditioning. But Frank never wavered. He believed in that farm like he believed in me. And it grew. By the time I was in college, Callahan Poultry was thriving. We were supplying to restaurants all over the county. Frank never paid himself much, he funneled everything back into the business and into my education. I graduated debt-free, thanks to him. I remember the day he handed me a folder. "These are the farm's ownership papers," he said, placing them on the kitchen table like they weighed 100 pounds. "I'm transferring 40% of the shares to you. You're the future of this place, Em." I cried. I hugged him and promised I'd never let him down. And for a while, I didn't. I worked part-time doing marketing for the farm while pursuing freelance design work on the side. I helped redesign the logo, created social media accounts, even set up a streamlined ordering system that doubled our restaurant clients. Frank never said much, but I saw the pride in his eyes. Then came Michael. My biological father reached out after seeing a magazine feature on our farm. "That's my daughter," he wrote in the comments, followed by a string of emojis. It went viral. People started tagging me. Some even messaged saying how much I looked like him. I ignored it at first. But then he messaged me privately. Said he regretted leaving. That he was young and scared and stupid. That he'd followed my life from afar, and he was proud of me. I didn't know how to feel. Curious, maybe. Cautious. But also a little excited. A part of me had always wondered about him. What he looked like now. If he thought about me. If he regretted leaving. Against my better judgment, I replied. We met for coffee. Michael was charming, well-dressed, smooth. He owned a marketing firm in the city, had remarried, no other kids. He apologized profusely, told me I was his biggest regret. He even cried. I told Frank about the meeting. He didn't yell or forbid me from seeing Michael again. He just nodded, real quiet-like, and said, "You're grown. You have a right to know where you come from." But I saw the hurt in his eyes. The way his shoulders sagged a little when he turned away. I hated how guilty I felt, like I was betraying him just by being curious. Over the next year, I saw more of Michael. He introduced me to his world, fancy dinners, high-end clients, posh downtown offices. He said he could help scale the farm. "You've done amazing, Em, but with the right branding, this place could go national. Let me help you." I pitched the idea to Frank. He was hesitant, but agreed to meet Michael. The meeting went poorly. Michael was slick, businesslike. Frank was stiff, defensive. The conversation turned sour when Michael called the farm a great rustic brand with solid sentimental value. Frank's jaw clenched. "This isn't a brand. It's my life's work." Afterward, Frank didn't say much. Just that I could do what I wanted, but he wasn't letting Michael near the farm's operations. That should have been the end of it. But then I got pregnant. My boyfriend and I had been trying for over a year. The moment I saw the 2 pink lines, I called both Michael and Frank. They were equally overjoyed. And that's when things started shifting. Michael became more involved, offering to invest in a new facility, talking about expanding the brand name using connections from his firm. I was hormonal, overwhelmed, and easily swayed by visions of success and legacy. I told Frank I wanted to bring Michael on as a minority partner. He said no. I pushed. We fought. It was the worst argument we ever had. "You're handing over our legacy to a man who left you," Frank shouted, red-faced. "Do you think he's here because he loves chickens? He's here because we're worth something now. You don't own me, Frank." I screamed back. "And he's still my father." His face crumpled. And for the first time in my life, Frank walked away from me. That should have been my wake-up call. Instead, I doubled down. I legally transferred my 40% share to Michael, said it would help streamline future decisions. I let him take over the farm's branding, marketing, and expansion. Frank stopped talking to me. He still worked the land, fed the birds, maintained the buildings, but he stopped joining us for dinner, stopped texting back, stopped smiling. Then my son was born. I named him Michael. Not after the man who raised me, but the one who came back into my life with a polished smile and empty hands. And that was the final nail. Frank didn't come to the hospital when my son was born. I waited. I watched the door like a child again, hoping he'd walk in, sweaty from work, with a bouquet of gas station flowers and that awkward, crooked smile of his. But he didn't. Not that day. Not the next. Not even when we brought the baby home. He sent a text, "Congratulations. I hope he's healthy. Take care." That was it. I wanted to call him, to say, "He's still your grandson, Frank. Please, come meet him." But the words stuck in my throat like barbed wire. Because deep down, I knew what I'd done. I'd chosen someone who barely knew me over the man who sacrificed everything for me. And worse, I'd given that man the keys to his life's work. Michael took over fast. The farm, once rough and humble with chipped paint and clunky equipment, was quickly transformed. New logos. Rebranded packaging. A PR campaign with glossy photos and a trendy slogan, "Farm Fresh with a Legacy." A legacy that wasn't even his. Frank stopped attending meetings. Michael said it was better that way. "He's not business-minded," he told me, pouring himself scotch in the living room. "Great guy, salt of the earth, but not exactly the face of a modern company." I didn't argue. Not then. I was too tired, too busy juggling diaper changes and sleep deprivation to realize how fast the ground was shifting under me. Frank retreated further each day. He still lived in the small house beside the barn, but we rarely saw him. Sometimes, I'd glance out the window and spot him moving slowly through the coop, feeding the hens with the same gentle patience I remembered from my childhood. He looked older. Frailer. As if I had aged him with a single name on a birth certificate. One evening, about 2 months after the baby was born, I found a letter on my doorstep. No envelope. Just a folded page, written in Frank's messy, slanted handwriting. "Emily. I built this place for you. Every bruise, every blister, every 4 a.m. morning in the cold, none of it was for chickens. It was for you. I didn't need a legacy. I needed a daughter who knew she was loved. I'm stepping away. I'll keep tending the birds until the season ends, but after that, it's all yours. You've made your choice. I hope it brings you happiness. Frank." I read it 3 times. By the end, my hands were shaking. I ran to his house, but he wasn't there. I checked the barn, the coop, even the tool shed. Nothing. His truck was gone. So was his toolbox. His boots were missing from the porch. He had left. And suddenly, the silence of the farm felt deafening. Michael tried to console me. "He'll come back," he said casually, scrolling through emails. "He's probably just trying to guilt-trip you." Typical old-school manipulation. I looked at him then, really looked, and saw it. The coldness behind the charm. The way he dismissed Frank like he was a stubborn employee instead of the man who raised me. That night, I went into Frank's old workshop. It had always smelled like sawdust and oil and something warm I could never quite name. I found old photos, stacked neatly in a box, me on his shoulders, me holding a baby chick, me holding a certificate at a school award ceremony with Frank beaming beside me. Michael wasn't in any of them. I cried. For hours. Not just for losing Frank, but for realizing how blind I'd been. I thought I was building a legacy, honoring both my fathers. But what I really did was discard the man who chose me, every day, for 26 years, for the one who'd abandoned me the first chance he got. The next morning, I called Frank. No answer. I left a message, then another. I drove to all the places I thought he might be, his sister's house, the old diner he liked, even the fishing dock by the lake. No sign of him. And then, the report started. Michael had sold a portion of the farm to an investment group. "It's just business," he said. They're going to help us expand into pre-cooked products, frozen meals, ready-to-eat options. It's the future, Em. I felt like I'd been slapped. We didn't agree to this, I said. You signed over your shares, he replied coolly. And Frank's out. That leaves me. That's when it hit me. This wasn't about building something together. This was a takeover. I went through the legal papers again. The ones I'd signed while half distracted, rocking my newborn in one arm and trying to keep my head above water. I hadn't just transferred my shares, I had given Michael controlling interest in the farm. I had handed him everything Frank had built. And now I was watching him dismantle it. The farm didn't feel like home anymore. Every morning, I woke up to the sounds of machinery and construction. Michael had begun tearing down the old chicken coops, Frank's coops. The ones he built by hand, one wooden beam at a time, in the years when we had nothing but a dream and some stubborn land. Now, sleek, steel-plated structures were going up in their place. Automated feeders, Michael said proudly. No more early mornings. No more labor. It's progress. But all I saw were tombstones. He had paved over Frank's blood, sweat, and decades of sacrifice, and I had let him. The workers he brought in didn't care about the land. They cursed and spat on the soil, smoking under the apple tree Frank used to nap beneath during harvest season. I tried to speak up once, to tell Michael the first didn't like how things were being run. He barely looked up from his laptop. Emily, you're exhausted. Why don't you take care of the baby and let me handle the business side? And just like that, I was dismissed from my own life. The final blow came a week later. I received a notice from the county. A zoning permit had been pushed through to build the feed processing plant, right where Frank's house had stood. Michael had it torn down while I was visiting my aunt in town. He hadn't told me. He didn't even mention it in passing. I stood there for hours that evening, staring at the bare patch of earth where Frank's home used to be. I bent down and touched the soil, hoping I might find something he left behind. A tool. A coin. A memory. But it was all gone. That night, I finally broke. I left Michael at the dinner table, took the baby, and drove. I didn't know where I was going at first. The baby slept in the back, his tiny breaths keeping me sane. I passed cornfields, silos, small towns that blinked by like ghosts. And then, I remembered the old cabin. Frank's fishing retreat. He used to take me there every summer for one weekend. Just us. No chickens. No phones. He said the lake healed things no one else could. I hadn't been there in years, but somehow, I remembered every turn, every fork in the gravel road. When I arrived, the cabin was dark, but the truck was there. I sat in the car for 10 minutes, heart pounding. Then I got out and walked up the steps. The porch light flickered on, motion activated. And there he was. Frank. Older, yes. Thinner. Tired. But still Frank. He opened the door slowly, eyes landing on the baby in my arms first. Then on me. Neither of us spoke for a moment. It was like we were standing at opposite ends of a broken bridge. I didn't know where else to go, I finally whispered. He nodded. Come in. The warmth hit me instantly, wood-burning stove, soft crackling, the faint smell of pine and old paper. I sat on the couch while he made tea. My son stirred, then settled again in my arms. Frank watched us silently. I broke the silence. I made a mistake. A terrible one. He didn't respond. Just handed me a mug and sat across from me, elbows on his knees, eyes fixed on the fire. I thought bringing Michael into the farm would be healing. Like completing something that was missing. But he's destroying everything. Your house, the coops, even the land, he doesn't care. I was so blind. Frank let out a breath, long, steady, like he'd been holding it in for months. I know, he said softly. I looked up, surprised. I've been watching from a distance, he continued. Had a buddy from the county office send me updates. I saw the permits, the contracts. I knew what he was doing. But I also knew. You had to see it for yourself. I gave him my shares, I choked. He has control. I don't know how to fix it. Frank didn't speak right away. Then he stood, walked to a drawer, and pulled out a folder. I never filed the transfer paperwork, he said. What? I took your signature and put it in a drawer. I had a bad feeling, Em. The day you handed me those papers, I looked into your eyes and saw someone who wasn't sure. So I stalled. Legally, the farm's still under our name. Yours and mine. Tears spilled down my cheeks. You You protected me even when I betrayed you. Frank sat beside me, his voice rough with emotion. I didn't protect you, Emily. I protected us. Because this farm wasn't just mine. It was ours. Built with calloused hands and bedtime stories. Built with bruised fingers and pancake Sundays. You were 5 years old when you helped me carry our first crate of eggs to market. Don't you remember? I nodded, crying harder. I remember. We sat in silence, my son snuggled between us, tiny and peaceful. Finally, Frank looked at me and smiled for the first time in months. What's his name? He asked. I hesitated. Michael. James. Frank raised an eyebrow. I smiled through my tears. James was your father's name, right? He nodded slowly. I reached out, took his hand. I'm going to make this right. I want the farm back. The real farm. I need your help. Frank squeezed my hand. Then let's fight for it. Together. The next morning, I woke to the sound of coffee brewing and fire crackling in the wood stove. Frank was already up, bundled in his old flannel jacket, flipping through documents at the kitchen table. The sunlight streamed through the cabin windows, and for the first time in months, I felt something close to hope. We need a plan, Frank said without looking up. We can't just walk in and demand he leave. But we have the law on our side. And I know the land better than he ever will. I nodded, adjusting the blanket over my baby. I'll do whatever it takes. Just tell me what to do. Frank outlined the situation carefully. The deed was still under our names, he never submitted the transfer paperwork to the county clerk. That meant Michael had been operating the farm illegally under the pretense of ownership. The contracts he signed, the modifications he approved, they could all be challenged. But we have to move fast, Frank warned. Before he files anything or sells off assets. We'll need a lawyer. I drove back into town that afternoon with the baby and a thick folder of documents Frank had saved. In a quiet office above the post office, I met with a local attorney named Miss Jordan, an older woman with sharp eyes and zero tolerance for BS. When I explained everything and handed over the deed, she leaned back and gave me a look I'll never forget. You've got a shot, she said. A damn good one. Especially if you have proof he acted in bad faith. Oh, I have more than proof, I said. I have witnesses. Workers. Neighbors. And pictures. He bulldozed Frank's house without telling me. He's trying to industrialize a farm built on heritage. She smiled. Then let's burn him legally. By the end of the week, we had filed a cease and desist order to halt all ongoing construction and contracts at the farm. Frank and I returned together, me holding the baby close, Frank standing tall by my side. Michael was in the middle of a meeting with potential buyers for his new processing plant when we arrived. Emily? He said, confused. Then his eyes narrowed. What's going on? You're trespassing, I said calmly. This land isn't yours. Michael scoffed. What the hell are you talking about? Frank stepped forward and handed him the notice. The paperwork was never filed. You're operating under false pretenses. This farm still belongs to us. His face drained of color. You said. I thought I was doing the right thing, I cut in. But you manipulated me. You used me. And you tried to erase the man who raised me. Michael looked between the two of us, fury building in his voice. You're making a mistake, Emily. You think he loves you more than I do? He built a chicken coop. I was going to make you a queen. I never wanted to be a queen, I said, voice shaking. I just wanted to be a daughter. And he gave me that. Michael clenched his fists. This isn't over. You'll regret this. No, Frank said quietly. We already did, but not anymore. The next few weeks were brutal. Michael filed a counterclaim, alleging verbal agreements and shared ownership. Ms. Jordan tore his case apart. He had no documentation, no consent forms, nothing in writing. All of it rested on my so-called intention, but legally, intention didn't matter without action. In court, Frank testified about the history of the farm. About the years he spent raising me, teaching me, protecting me. The judge listened silently as Frank spoke about the day we opened our first egg stall at the farmer's market and how I used to fall asleep in the hayloft while he counted inventory by lantern light. Then I testified. I told the truth. I thought reconnecting with my biological father would bring something back into my life. But all it brought was loss. He didn't come here for me, he came for what Frank built. He didn't see a daughter. He saw an asset. The judge's ruling came swiftly. Michael was ordered to vacate the property within 10 days. All business operations under his name were suspended. He had to pay damages for unauthorized construction and was barred from contacting me directly again. I cried in the hallway outside the courtroom. Not because we won, but because I'd nearly lost everything that mattered. Frank placed a hand on my shoulder. "You came back," he said. I nodded, wiping my eyes. "I never should have left." He smiled, the kind that made me feel 5 years old again. "Now let's go home." The day Michael moved out, it rained. Not a storm with roaring thunder and crashing wind, but a soft, steady drizzle, as if the sky was letting out a quiet sigh. I stood on the porch, cradling my son, watching Michael's black pickup truck roll slowly through the gate. There were no goodbyes. No last glance. Michael didn't look back. And I didn't expect him to. Frank stood beside me in silence, his hands tucked into his jacket pockets. His silver hair was damp from the mist. We didn't speak. Some pain doesn't need words, only presence. When the sound of the engine finally faded into the distance, I turned to him. "Do you think the land will recover in time for the next season?" I asked, my voice soft but steady. Frank nodded. "If we start soon. The soil's still warm this time of year." I nodded back, holding my son a little tighter. Something inside me had cracked open, a shell of blind trust and old illusions, now shattered. But at the very center of that wreckage, one thing remained untouched: Frank. The following weeks were quiet and full of work. We fixed the fence Michael had ordered torn down. Frank repaired the damaged chicken coop. I painted the porch and scrubbed the windows clean, as if trying to wash away the stains of a long nightmare. At night, when my son slept, I would lie in the dark and think about everything I had lost. Not just trust, but time. Innocence. But then I'd think of Frank, the man who quietly raised me, who walked me through the fields every morning, who stayed when everyone else turned away. One afternoon, I stumbled upon an old box of photos in the barn. There was one of me at age 10, riding on Frank's shoulders during the harvest festival. I had a crown of sunflowers and a beaming smile. Frank looked up at me like I was his whole world. I pressed the photo to my chest, tears slipping down my cheeks. I had wandered so far, when love had always been right here. One morning, just after sunrise, I poured Frank a cup of coffee and sat across from him at the kitchen table. "I spoke to a lawyer," I began, looking him in the eye. "I'm transferring half the ownership of the farm to you." Frank froze mid-sip, staring at me. "Emily, you don't have to do that. This is your home. I just need to be here. That's enough for me." I shook my head. "No. This is our home. If it weren't for you, none of this would still be here. I want it to be official. No one can take it from us again." Frank lowered his head, his eyes brimming. "You have no idea how long I've waited to hear that." October arrived, bringing harvest with it. We threw a small celebration, just a few neighbors, old friends, some grilled chicken, cornbread, and soft laughter filling the yard. I held my son under the warm string lights, watching people dance, chat, and smile. A strange warmth spread through me, peace. I didn't have to walk on eggshells anymore. I didn't have to please anyone. I was home. I was me. A car pulled up at the gate. My breath caught when I saw Lily, my niece, step out. She ran toward me, her brown hair bouncing, clutching a stuffed bear. "Aunt Emily," she shouted, throwing her arms around me. I hugged her tightly, feeling her little heart beat against mine. "I missed you so much," I whispered. Frank came over and gently handed Lily a hard butterscotch candy, the same kind he used to give me after long days in the fields. She grinned from ear to ear, and for a moment, everything felt whole. That night, when my son was asleep, I sat at my desk and pulled out his birth certificate. Under Father's name, I wrote 3 words: Frank Robert Harris. The man who helped bring me into this world had left. But the man who stayed, through scraped knees, teenage storms, and adult heartbreaks, he had always been here. No grand gestures. No promises. Just love, steady and unshakable. I used to believe blood made you family. Now I know, love is thicker than blood. Family is not about who shares your name, but who stays. A few weeks later, I took my son out to the fields. Frank was mending the new fence, sleeves rolled up, sweat glistening under the late autumn sun. "You know," I said gently, "his name is Frankie." Frank looked up, stunned. "I named him after you," I continued. "Because I want him to grow up knowing kindness, patience, and honesty. Like you." Frank pressed a hand to his chest, eyes shimmering. Then he smiled, a deep, warm smile I would carry with me forever. "Well," he said, voice thick with emotion. That little boy has a lot to live up to. I nodded, heart swelling. And he'll grow up knowing who his real father is. I turned back to the golden fields behind us, our land. The soil that had seen tears, betrayal, and loss. Now the birthplace of something new. Because finally, I understood. Home is not a place. Home is the one who stays.